So we'll move on to the second part of the literature review exercise. So basically what we'll do is go through the entire stages with some kind of hands-on kind of work that we'll do in between. Okay, so unplanned search for literature is almost like, you know, going to a mall where somebody gives you a card, a purchase card, and just says buy what you want. Okay, so if you go into an online and you have online resources given to you by your university, you know, it's like every single paper that you see, you feel you want that, you want to download it. Plus, while you're looking for one paper, you will find 3 other papers which you will say, I may be interested in this, why don't I download? So you will end up actually spending a lot of time and also collecting lots of things that are useful but not immediately relevant. Okay, so that's why we say unplanned search is like a bull in a china shop. You know, you're all over the place. So what is it that you need to do in order to make sure that you're in this large mall with so much that's available, and at the same time you need to be very clear about what you want, so that, you know, you don't lose time, and of course indirectly you're not also spending a lot of money. So what is the to-do list? So the to-do list says that at first you scope your search topic, be clear about the subject matter and what could be all the keywords that you need to look for, you need to deploy. Also choose the resources to search. Where do you want to go? Which platform you want to search? Again, are you looking for media coverage? Are you looking for historical work? Are you looking at published papers? So that clarity you should also develop. Then clearly choose your search terms and also define your inclusion and exclusion criteria. Okay, I'll talk to you about what is inclusion and what's exclusion criteria. Then you have to compile your search strategy and run your search. Then look through all the papers and then download the papers that you require. Then organize them, make your notes, then identify your themes and write your review. So it looks like pretty simple, but each of these stages itself takes considerable time and also a lot of thinking. So in terms of scoping your research, what we are saying is what is the specific thesis or research problem or question that you're pursuing? That again, you need to clearly, at least broadly define it. Then also look at what kind of literature review you're doing. Very often, as I said earlier, when you do a literature review, you're trying to understand the big picture of the literature in the subject matter. And when you're doing it, obviously you're looking at all aspects: theory, concepts, methodology, research designs, you know, type of statistics researchers are using, the kind of analysis that they do, the interpretations they make, and the conclusions they draw. So every aspect you're very interested in, you want to read. However, when you're doing a specific literature review, sometimes if you for a research paper, you probably are much more focused, right? When you're doing your own research paper, you're not getting too much into methodologies, because let's say your paper is not so much focused on methodologies, but it's looking at what kind of observations seem to be informing public policy in different ways. Yeah. So you're basically looking at typically certain findings that is of interest to you. So some clarity on what you're looking for needs to be there. Yeah. So that's almost like if you were to, since I already have a picture of, you know, a shopping cart, if you think in similar lines, when you want to go shopping, you would prepare a list of all the things that you want to buy. And also when you do the list, it's not like you write your vegetable and then you write your provision, then you write the clothing, then you'll write your fruit. You have a kind of sense of classification. So you know that when you're going to buy vegetable, you also will buy the fruit. When you're going to buy your provisions, you're also going to buy some other related item. So in the sense, what you're going to shop, you look for related, utilities, so that you're not going zipping back and forth to buy things. Similarly, when you're doing review of literature also, you need to have this kind of clarity saying, okay, first I'm going to look for these papers and want to very specifically look for papers that are focusing on theoretical aspects. Okay, or you will say, I want to do specifically on Sage Online, or I want to specifically look at EPW. So have your clarity about which platform, which resource you want to look first, and not get carried away, because it's so easy when in many of these sites like PubMed and also the health sites, Lancet and all that, when you're looking at one paper, you get lots of prompts on the right side which tell you similar papers, papers of similar nature. They keep on posting there, or they also keep posting papers that are most frequently cited or the most frequently downloaded. So it's often quite attractive for you to go and click on that. Then that will take you to another paper. So often you forget where did you start, and how did you land up here, and to trace back, you lost your entire thread. Okay, so while you see something interesting, what would be useful is, on a lot of computers, you can always do a right click and say open in a different tab. So it doesn't close this window and open up on its own, but it opens in another tab, so that what you're working on stays on the screen and that does not collapse. Okay, so don't miss out, but also click and say open another screen. Okay, so what first we are saying is, be clear about what you're looking for, and then what is the scope of the literature. Okay, what types of publications are you going to be looking? Journals, books, government documents, popular media. What discipline am I working? Sometimes very specific disciplinary focus if you have, then you will also be looking for journals under that discipline. So sometimes you have few disciplines, couple of disciplines which are important for you. So you may even check for that, because when I'll show you online how to do net search, I'll show you how there are like hundreds of journals that are available on that particular aggregate search engine. And if you're not clear, actually it searches so much and gives you so much that you lose time, sifting through all that. So having some clarity of the scope would be very important. Yeah. And also I think in one of the earlier morning sessions, we were talking about timelines. Somebody also was asking, should we say 50 years, should we say 100 years, 10 years, 5 years? So very often it's linked to the subject matter. So to make sure that, supposing you're doing a research to look at the trajectory of discourses around reproductive rights. Yeah. So then the trajectory of the discourses, let's say, are so much set around the time of 1990s, mid 1990s, because we had a major UN conference. Okay, it was a major conference that took place in Cairo. So somewhere, if there is a strong feeling that the the trajectory has changed since that time, then it's important to say 1995 to 2019, right? Because you are definitely having a timeline as a very important aspect of your review. So I think the time that you're going to fix as to what you want to, which period you're going to look for, is also linked to what kind of key questions that you have in your literature review. Okay, so define the dates of the literature that you will search is what we've spoken now. What is the earliest date of publication that you're interested in, and what is the latest date? So the time period it's relevant for you will depend on your topic, and that's what I said just now. If you're looking for review articles, you may wish to consider restricting your search for the last few years, right? So that's something, few years could be like 5, or sometimes it's a subject matter on which lot is being written, 5 years is good enough. If it's a rarity, then you keep 10 years, right? You can do that. You may make a distinction of the type of papers in terms of disciplinary background. So just to give you an example, when we say inclusion and exclusion, what including and what's we're excluding. Very often in the keywords itself, you can say not means I want this and this and this or this and not this, right? You can give keywords like that, but sometimes it's not so nuanced. Not all platforms give you so much of possibility. Then what you will do is whatever references you get, you make decisions about what you're excluding, right? So we have at one point looked at research papers pertaining to TB, okay, tuberculosis. So when we are looking at tuberculosis, things to do with access to healthcare services, utilization of healthcare services, compliance to the medical protocols, and also what do you call overall betterment and recovery rates for men and women. If this is what we were looking, we were not interested in looking at papers that had more of the biochemistry of TB or things to do with what kind of protocols are better than what. Like, should there be a medication for 1 week, 2 weeks? You know, all these are very medical kind of thing, and researchers write those, which is of not direct relevance to me. For example, if you want to look at COVID-19 related papers as social scientist, you would be more interested in looking at social distancing, issues of domestic violence, children's rights, things to do with employment, etc. But when you say COVID-19 and search for literature, you'll also get lots of other medical kind of thing about treatment procedures, what seems to be working better, would wearing masks or not wearing masks is better, you know, so on and so forth. So as a social scientist, you actually will exclude that, right? So in your exclusion criteria, you will actually write that a lot of medical, biomedical and biomedical, physiological, biochemistry kind of research papers have been excluded. Okay, it's only social relevance, or let's say social significance or social determinants. We're only looking at that, right? Similarly, we have done research on smartphones and their use among young people. And I'll also take you through that example in next slides. Now, with cell phone research also, there is a lot of research when we want to look for that is talking about broadbands and, you know, things to do with the medical aspects to do with long-term cell phone use and whether it causes cancer, etc. So since we are interested in looking at cell phone use among young people more as a kind of social interaction, social experience, identity formation, etc., we did not look into those aspects that have to do with the medical reasons and the public health reasons. So in our inclusion criteria, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, and in exclusion, we are excluding these. So you need to have that kind of clarity and also write it down. So what are we saying? You need to be clear about what is it you're researching. You need to be clear of what are the broad contours of what you're researching, what kind of keywords would be useful for you, and what is the time period within which you're going to be looking for your data, and what is it that you're going to include and what's that you're going to exclude. Okay, so that kind of clear strategy you must have. And when we come up to the search strategy, which is like actually when you're searching, the keywords that you put in, that's part of what is called the search strategy. So since all research will have critical elements, you need to look at key things like what is it we are looking at for our smartphone research that we did, mobile phone, cell phone, smartphone research that we've done. For us, the subject was cell phones, okay, or smartphones. And the population that we are looking at is adolescents. Now, since different groups have different definitions, we said we will keep it very open, but maybe anywhere between the age of 14 to 16 or 17. That's the kind of period we're looking at. And then in terms of our focus, our interest is looking at issues of romance and sexuality. Okay, how are cell phones associated with issues to do with sexuality, romance, intimacy, and sexual identity, and so on. So those are our areas of focus. And what is the broad outcomes that we keep seeing all the time? People say that this use of cell phones among young people, it's leading to something. And literature is often talking about lack of sleep, poor academic performance, or increase in love affairs or elopement, etc. So those are generally broadly the outcomes that we know at the outset that things keep coming up. So we put that also there and try to say, okay, we look for literature on these subject matters. And in case we feel that we want to do related research, we're going to look also at academic performance or elopement or love affairs, etc. Okay, so this is the example, and we go further on in the same example. So what you need to do is you should aim to record the following information. When you start your search, whether you're actually going to do serious systematic review paper or not, it's always good to have this kind of discipline so that whenever you write a paper, supposing you decide to write a paper based on review, one of the methodological considerations in the paper is reviewers would like to know how did you go about the search, okay? Because if your search itself is flawed, then maybe you're getting papers which are not sufficiently representative of all the literature that is available, right? So it means the kind of sampling requisites of sampling that we have for research, you have the same kind of requirements also when you do your review of literature. So it's like, you know, a person searching for a key, okay, and somebody searching for a key, and everybody comes and asks him, what is it you're searching? Then he says, I'm searching for a key. So people will join that person to search the key, and then after a point, one person gets a bright idea and asks, did you lose the key here? Then the guy says, no, I actually lost it in the darkness, but because there's no light there, I'm searching here. Okay, so it means what? Actually, you should be searching there, not here. So it could be the same thing. You know, you are supposed to search on certain platforms, on certain sites, certain journals, and probably if you've left them all out, you're searching somewhere else, then maybe the research papers that you got and the ones that you reviewed and you've written is not adequately representing a lot of literature that's already available, right? So when you say, for example, you write something and you show it to the supervisor or show it to a research expert, they'll say, but how come you didn't look at these 4 papers that got published? There was a special issue in Economic and Political Weekly where all papers were only on this subject. How come you missed it? Then you really, you know, scratch your head saying, why didn't I go and look at that? So the idea is to check, be very clear of all the platforms, identify what kind of journals might be carrying such articles and look for them and record what all you have looked at so that you put out and say, this is what I have done. Okay, so your search question, the search resources databases, and then the coverage period, your final search strategy, because you often start with one strategy and get something, then you feel you probably have missed, then you do another. So you might do 2 to 3 different searches at different points of time. So you need to put the search strategy. You need to also put how many searches you got and how did you sift through and how did you choose your papers. Okay, so that's something that you need to record and be able to write in the paper. The number of results retrieved from each database you need to clearly give, and the sample papers that I have given you, you will see how those are actually, you know, shared or let's say presented in the research paper. So in our smartphone research, these are the keywords we had, and we call them primary keywords and secondary keywords. In the sense, this is what we started with as primary, and then later we felt if there's need to also search with these, we will put them. Or sometimes in the same search you can give, you know, not just 2, but you can give 4, and I'll show you how it can be done. So we have done things like smartphone, youth, then some, I mean, people use the word synonymously like smartphone, cell phone, mobile phone. So we put all those as options, or is what you do. And similarly, youth, some people use the word young people, some people use the word adolescent, some people use the word youth. Sometimes they are referred to as teens, as tweens, as teenagers and all that. So we had to give all those options, try 2 at a time, 3 at a time, and also do other searches where we use those also. We were keen on technology, social media, internet. So largely, if you see, these are our key themes that we feel are important for our research, and therefore they became our search words, or let's say keywords for searching. Now, one option that we have is we actually can spend a bit of time, studying your annotations to see whether you have studied, or I'll first go through and tell you what should your annotations have, okay, for part of the literature review. Or let's say before this, let me do, are there any questions? How inclusion criteria are different from exclusion? Is there any line between, is that clear? I already had clarified that. Anita, is that clear? I said what gets included, what gets excluded.
For suppose if we are going for a sample of age of 65 above. So while in inclusion criteria, we may say that like for this therapy we are including 65 above, or can we is it okay like if we keep it in exclusion, like we 65 below people are excluded? So what to be like more clarity on that, ma'am?
Yeah, see, what you are saying has to do with the research sample, okay? What I am talking about is what is it you include and exclude in research papers that you're going to be searching, okay? So in that you don't give this kind of specifications for as you would give for your research study.
For suppose if we are doing review paper on people who are dementia people, okay, and then we are going like with this kind of intervention, counterclockwise intervention on this, we are going to do a systematic review. Then inclusion criteria, maybe we can keep that above 80 people, above 80 age of 80 only we are going to include these papers. So even that includes like,
No, see, what you need to do is basically, if you think that there are enormous number of papers which distinctly will give you the age of the person and issues of dementia, okay, supposing you have thousands of papers written on dementia among people in the age of 60s, among the age of 70s, among the age of 80s, then you need to be so specific, okay? But otherwise, if most research on dementia is happening and it happens anytime from 60 onwards, and it's not a very large pool of literature that you're going to have, then you don't have to give that age criteria, because that will not be part of the keywords that people put in their research papers. Okay, they only will say things like elderly or senior citizens, something like that. They won't say 85 above year, that kind of thing won't be in the research paper. So even if you say something like that, the search engine doesn't do anything with that. Okay. So now what we'll do is the same thing that we are looking at: smartphones, youth, and let's say romantic love. Okay, these are the three keywords I have. So I will put them in what are called as booleans. Okay, so I will put this and say smartphones, youth, and romantic love. And can you see how many hits I have? 9,65,000 results. Can you see here?
Yes, ma'am, we can see you.
Okay, yes, so it means, yes. Yeah. So typically when we go into Google, it puts out lots of results for you, right? You may get some good ones. You may get lots of things which are of no use. Essentially because a lot of material that's put up on Google not necessarily regulated by anybody. Okay, so nothing that is here gets authenticated by anybody. You may also find, for example, if you were to search the same on Google Scholar, let's see if that gives us what kind of results that will give us. Okay, so we'll see if there is Google Scholar. Okay, here I get something like 8,050 results. Okay, so this is still better than that. That is what, almost like 9.5 lakhs, right? So here you see there are many, and very often you will find interesting papers to start with reading something, right? But if you were to do a proper search on a aggregate search engine, right? How will you do it is, I'll take you into my TISS search engine and just show you so that you can do it in your own with your own university or college resource. So I have here a remote login. So if I log into that, okay, I sign in with my email. See, this is the platform that I have, where peer-reviewed journals, several journals, full-text journals, Indian journals are all there. Okay, and number of things are here for us to do. Okay, and I basically want to go into the databases which have journals which are, when you say aggregate search engine, Gestor, ProQuest, Project Muse, all these are aggregate search, Web of Science, these are aggregate search engines in the sense they are like Google's for academic work. Okay, and they are all journals subscribe and become members to these aggregate search engines, and their search engine, when you put keywords, will run through all the databases and give you your result. Okay, so what we'll do is either, so one option is you can go and do it in Gestor, or if I want to say, okay, I want to do on Sage journals online. Okay, because Sage has so many journals. So it does have journals on youth, it has journals on gender, it has journals on sexuality. So I'll say, let me start with Sage journals. Okay, so either I can just put something here and search quickly, or I can click on advanced search. So when I click on advanced search, it comes out like this, right? So here I'll say smartphones. Okay, then I'll say youth, and I can add one more here. So I will say romantic love, right? Which means I want research papers having these 3 words, but it's asking me, do you want it anywhere? So I want to see what are all the possibilities. So I can only look for papers that have smartphone in the title. Obviously, it can't be an author. It can be only in the keywords, or it can be the abstract. Very often, it's not likely that you will find the topic that you're looking for in a title of a paper, right? Then keywords might be a good idea, but if that author has not used the keyword that you are looking for, then you will miss out the paper. Whereas abstract definitely is one where, if somebody has written about youth smartphones or romantic love in general, it might come in the abstract. But let's say you don't want to take a chance. You'll say anywhere. Let me first see. You're assuming there aren't too many papers. So you'll say, let it be anywhere. I'll leave it there. So anywhere, anywhere, anywhere. Now, what are the dates I'm going to be looking for? I scroll down and it is giving me these options. All dates, or do I want to customize it? I'll say I want to customize it. Okay. So to start with, I will say, okay, in the past 5 years, because smartphones and all are not so old, so I can't say like 1965 or something like that. So I'll say 2015, and then I'll put it at 2020. Absolutely whatever has been published in the recent past, I want that. Now again, in terms of access, I can say all content, or I can say only open access content. Now the difference, I don't know how many of you know, when you say open access, it means that paper is available for a free download. Okay, and then only content to which I have full access, which is here, basically means depending on the subscription that your library has, you will have access to those articles, right? But then I want to be free. I want to say, okay, all content, and then look for, if I'm not able to download, find other ways of getting it, rather than losing out an opportunity of finding the material. So what have I done now? So I'm saying all content that's available in the past 5 years that has these 3 words anywhere in the text. Okay. And then if I want to do very specific search, if I know a particular journal, I can do this. But since now I'm doing it like a broad one and I'm looking for everything, I just keep this much. Okay, I'm done. I'm ready. And I'm saying search. So I will want to see how many will come up, right? So you will see here results, 56 results I have got in these 5 years, 56 papers. And bravo, the first paper is my paper, okay, along with my research intern she came to work with me as an intern, and both of us have done this research and published this paper on smartphones, youth and moral panics, exploring print and online media narratives in India. But if you see here, it has a lock. See, it's saying no access. Yeah. So when it says no access, what does it mean? It means I cannot download this paper. So, but I say, okay, let me actually see what is this paper. If I want, I can click here and look at what is the abstract. If you are a person looking at it, you can click and say, I want to see the abstract, or I can see the preview, or let's say I'll just click on the paper. When I click on the paper, it should be opening now. So if I were to click on this, it will immediately go and open it. Okay. And it says the title is It's Complicated, the Construction of Indian Middle Class Teens in Social Media. Now, because this has a key, open key, I can download this paper. Okay, you can actually say download PDF, and then it will come out like this for you, and you can download it. Okay, which means this person had paid for this paper, right? If they have paid for the paper, it opens up and they can download. If you have not paid for it, they keep it closed and then they ask you to pay for it. Yeah. So let's see if my paper opens again, and we'll click on this. Yeah, it's opening. It's slow, but it's opening. Okay, so yeah, look here. So now it's opening, and what you will see here is there will be a payment gateway. Okay, it will ask me to pay for it, for me to be able to download this paper. Okay, see here, it gives the abstract of the paper and it says these are the access options, and it says Tata Institute of Social Science does not have access to this content, right? So it means I have to purchase this article, and it gives me all this information about all the references that this paper has. And in fact, whenever you see something like this and you find it here, it means you can click and open these. All these uplinks you can open, and very often, if they don't have a payment gateway, you can actually download them. Okay. Now, the trick I want to tell you here is, because this paper, is not going to be opening. So, what would be useful is to look for what is the DOI of this paper. Okay, DOI is the digital indicator. What is O? Digital access indicator or something. So it means every single journal article gets a DOI nowadays. So on the internet, it has an identity of its own. So if I just put that number itself, I'll be able to get that article. So in this case, this entire thing is not the DOI. So let me just get you the DOI of my article. Just allow me for a minute to just get you DOI. This is the paper. Okay, so whenever you hit a roadblock where they're asking you to pay, what I'll say is look for the DOI. Okay, article information. If you see, you will find the DOI of the paper. Some reason this is giving some other number. So now what we should do is go to another tab, right, and see carefully. I will type a small secret. It is SC. I don't know how many of you know. Maybe many of you know. SCI, and please write it down, SCI-HUB-SE. Okay, when you do that, it will actually take you to this place called Ski Hub. Okay, Ski Hub is a very interesting site. What they basically do is they source all the papers and they keep them there because they basically believe that research should not be behind paywalls. Okay, so they find their own money and they put in their own efforts to remove, as it says here, remove all barriers in the way of science, right? So obviously all those journals that are asking for money won't be happy about Ski Hub, but this exists like a black economy. Okay, so if I were to put my DOI here, this is the DOI of my paper, and then I say open. Okay, it opens my paper. Have you seen this? Now what you can do is run through the entire paper to see if it's of interest to you, and then you can say save. When you say save, it downloads. Okay, sometimes you'll also find some people on this side, like some advertisement or some woman waving out. Don't click anywhere. Okay, because very often in these kind of sites you also have a lot of malware that is superimposed and confuses you. So don't do anything but go to the save button and click, and it will download. Okay, since I already have the paper, I'm not doing that, but I would like you to see this paper quickly. The keywords that whatever example I gave you, this paper is based on that example. Okay, so what we have done, all those examples, we have written this paper, and the paper actually, apart from its introduction, through all that we have seen, we felt that there's a lot of moral panic in the, lot of moral panic on the internet and also in the public domain, and that we feel was not at all backed up with any kind of solid evidence. Okay, so look at this. This is called the protocol. So all the keywords we used, which I had shown you in the PPT, is all put out here because you have to actually tell how did you arrive at your material. Despite that, we had this paper go through 4 revisions and finally it got published because reviewers will ask you lots of questions. So if you see this, it will tell you what are the sources that we have looked at, LexisNexis and Google News. Then how many documents did we receive? How many did we think are useful? Okay, so we have a draft protocol. Then how many did we actually take? Okay, documents that met revised selection criteria, full text documents, 70 that we looked at, and we have done 20 case studies after 70, right? So it means your review of literature itself is like one research project, rigorous research project, based on which we could write this paper. So please do walk through this process and see if you can download this paper. Okay. Now, very similarly to Ski Hub, okay, there is another site which is very useful for books. Okay, because a lot of books are not easily available. They are published abroad. They're also very, very expensive. Okay, so this is a very important site called libgen, libgen.is. Okay, write it down. And when you put libgen, this is what comes up. It's called Library Genesis. Okay. I was looking for some book and I actually put the title and got it. So I can't remember the title, but I remember the okay, this title I'll put and just show you. Okay, I'm looking for a book on health equity. If I know the actual title, I can put it here, or remotely, even if I know, I can put it here, and then I will say search. And what it does is all the books that are available with the title health equity, it will actually show up for me. Okay, so if I'm interested in this book, which says gender equity in health, okay, the shifting frontiers of evidence and action. I'll say, yes, I want this book. I'm very interested in this book. I can also get a small blurb or a small review of the book, and then their contents page. I can see all this and say, yes, this is clearly what I want, and I don't have the money to buy, and I don't want to spend my money to buy. So I click on this. Okay, again, here lots of other things might come up. Be careful, don't click on everything and anything. It says get, just click on get. And what it does is, on your system, it downloads the book. Okay, and I don't know what they really do, but the download also doesn't take much time, and it downloads the book. So we will leave that download on the side and come back to where we started at the database. So we've done Sage journals online. Supposing we go into Gestor. Okay, some of you are familiar with Gestor. So you go into Gestor, again you do advanced search. Okay, in the advanced search, if I were to do some other search, not the smartphone, or we'll do smartphones, there we got, I think, about 63 papers. So here we'll see how many we will get. Okay, so we'll say smartphones, and we will say youth, and we'll say add a search box. One more we'll get here, and we'll say romantic love. And let's add another search box, and you see here, I can say or. Okay, so for example here, instead of youth, if I were to say mobile phones, because these are used synonymously, I can say smartphones or mobile phones. Okay, and I can remove youth, romantic love, and say and youth. Okay, and in the place of youth, you may also have sometimes young people, and then you will say now romantic love. If you want, you can use a not, but I can't think of what not. What is it I don't want? Okay. I don't know. Well, I won't bother about that. So I'll take this many fields, and again I'll go back and say I want only research articles. I want, see, Gestor gives you many more options beyond what Sage is given. Okay? So I'll say I want only English papers, and the publication timeline, I'm saying 2015 to 2020. And then I will see how many different journals are there. Okay, so many journals, and each subject matter has number of titles, right? It means this aggregate search engine is going to run through all these and search. So if you don't want it to search all these, you can actually spell out. Okay, so this is the book that we were downloading. Remember? It downloaded in the background and it opened up. Are you able to see? Yes? Gender equity in health. See, this is an entire book I could download. Now, obviously, this is also like downloading films on torrent, right? So it's considered black. So I can't put it in my PPT. That's why I told you on the slide. Okay, I didn't tell you, you didn't hear me. You can take care of yourself. So I did this. Now I'll say search. And let's see how many it gives. Okay, so it gave me 2,670. Okay, that's a large number, and that's also possible because many things get picked up, things that are not directly relevant also, but if there's romantic love, it comes up. So what you need to do is go through these, or you can also do something more, like you can go by relevance, or you can say I want to only see the newest ones. I don't want to see old ones. So you can start with the recent ones, but this number will not change. Okay. But if you think this number also is too much for you to sift through, obviously, if you have to go through 2,670 documents, it's impossible, right? Too much of time will just go in that. So what you can actually do is decide on which journals you wanted to look at. Okay. Supposing I'll say, I don't want all the journals, but please look only in cultural studies. And see, it's already searching. The moment I said cultural studies, the whole thing came down to 72. So do you get it? The moment you have much more clearer ways of searching, you will get more, doable kind of results, right? So I have 72 results, which is not difficult to manage, right? Now, what you should do is whatever articles you want, you can go on clicking them here, right? And then you can keep saying save. So it saves all these and again shows you whatever you want. You can always download those PDFs, or if you want to just use the citation first, you want the citation first. Okay, so what you can do is go to cite this item and you will get the citation in all the formats: MLA format, APA format, Chicago format. Have a look at this. Okay, so you create a Word document, and if APA is what we use, just copy like this and paste. So you just copy and paste it into your clipboard or into your Word document. But as I told you, I was telling you in the morning and also yesterday, there are a variety of softwares. For example, EndNote, ProCite, Zotero, Mendeley, etc. If you have them on your computer, very often when you are doing these searches, that one will be sitting there very quietly and waiting for you to pass on all your references into its box. So then it creates a library. So when you write a paper, and if you just say, for example, you type out Poshak, it will pull up and tell you that Poshak, there are 3 articles, which one do you want? So you click on which one you're going to use. So while you're writing your paper, at the end, your reference list is already ready. Okay. So I hope that's something you can crack yourself doing YouTube. You're a young people, you can do it. I myself am trying to get some time during this lockdown and learn how to use one of these softwares. But please use those softwares so that lots of things are going to be a lot more easy for you. Okay, you can save your stuff. You can see export selected citation. So if you were to click 3-4 of these, okay, and then say, okay, I'm ready now to go, it will say, now shall you export it, right? If you say export, it will ask you, where do you want me to export? So if you have any of these, it goes there. Okay, I have Zotero, but I have it in an earlier version. So it tells me your easy proxy does not allow you to do this. That means TISS proxy does not allow me to fiddle around with this system and my system. So never mind. So this is what I quickly wanted to walk you through. So when you do Google, you get 9,75,000. When you go into a specific journal, a specific site, search engine like Sage, we got some, I think 65 or something like that. Then we've gone into a broader search engine like Gestor. You got several to start with, and when you specify your journals, you got 72. Okay, so this is the reason why we say don't go and use Google. Google Scholar is useful, but that cannot be the basis on which you say that you have done your of literature. You need to do this, and you need to do this several iterations and download your articles. You do your first round reading, get good clarity about what's going on, and if you feel, again, you get lots of cross references, you can use them. You can do another round of search for getting your papers. So I'll just stop here. Can we take question answers, and then we can take it and then I can continue again. Web of Science, somebody saying, now you guys can do it yourself. Okay, you can actually use your own keywords, keywords of the research that you people are doing. Okay, yeah. What is this one? How to cite the article? What is the question? Can you switch on your mic? Sumi, can you switch on your mic? Is there any possibility of doing the same to extract statistical data like you get in India Stat, how you share about the journal? You mean, no. I don't think these journals help you extract any data. They don't. Data related ones are different, right? So you can't do that here. Yeah, any sites are fine. I mean, open, even if you're saying open databases, provided they are covering most of the journals, you should be able to. But I have actually not heard of these databases, Eric and DH. I have not heard of them. Can we use MS Word reference for citation, manage search, insert citation? I think so. You know, I have not used, so I don't know. I think you can. I was told that MS Office does have this referencing available. I have not used it. Is it okay to do review paper? Okay, that's done. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. What about Sumi? Or is she going to ask some question?
Yeah, last part, citing the article, that part I didn't follow correctly. If you can explain once again, it will be very useful.
Okay. See, yeah. So when you have an article and you also have downloaded it, all articles, whichever ones you're going to be using in your literature review or in your review paper, etc., you need to cite them, right? So instead of typing them all over again, that article itself gives you the citation as per various citation styles. So APA is the American Psychological Association style. Then you have the MLA and you have Chicago. All of these are abbreviations for various associations and their styles of referencing, right? So I have shown you there. You can actually copy that and paste it into your Word document so that you don't have to miss out on anything. You know, the citation that's coming up there has everything. It has the volume number, issue number, page numbers of the article, and it's exactly the way that style manual is asking for. And you copy and paste it and keep it as part of your notes. That's what I'd say. Yeah. Otherwise, we lose a lot of time typing up our own thing. And then I was also telling you that there are softwares that do it. So if you have chosen 3-4 different articles that you want, you can export the citations and the system will already save it for you in the style that you want to save it. So you don't even do any typing. Yeah. Any more questions or we take a tea break? Okay, so we'll go ahead with the session. So after basically going through, you know, thinking about keywords and then thinking about actually doing the search, understanding about the variety of things that we keep coming up with. Now you have all your articles in place and then you have to go to the next step. So obviously the next step is where I said you have to read and write your own annotation. Okay. So I started reading your annotations, but also have many still to be done. So I've not completed my task. So what I'll do is just talk to you about what is it we expect within an annotation. And after that, I can give you 5 minutes and each of you can actually see the annotation that you have sent and assess for yourself whether your annotation is robust enough for you to do your review. Okay. So reading articles and making notes is the next stage. So reading research articles is different from reading fiction or non-academic material. And I was telling you, there is this amazing 1,000-page book called titled Shantaram. You know, when I picked up that book, it was so hard for me to put it down, though it was 1,000 pages. And I must have read it in a matter of 3 days or 4 days, right? So the way, in fact, fiction authors can keep you so excited and engaged, academic material is not so. It's boring, it's prosaic. writing styles are so impossible, and I at least find a lot of postmodernist language absolutely inaccessible. It's all English, but it's quite inaccessible. So despite that, given the fact that we opted to be in academics, we need to see how to have a good survival strategy to read and get the best out of everything, and not get completely disillusioned and leave midway. Okay. So to write a good literature review or state your research problem, you need to read and digest the literature, and this is what I've been saying since yesterday. Now you'll often hear a variety of language, or let's say somebody says jargon all the time in this workshop. This is jargon. There's a lot of jargon about what is it that you do, what kind of notes can you write in when you do research writing or you do notes taking. So one word is annotation, another word is summary, third word is synopsis, and another word is abstract. Like we all keep hearing all these words. In fact, people also often ask me, what is the meaning of this or the other? For example, we use the word conference, right? Then we say seminar, then we say workshop, then we say symposium, then we also say summit. I mean, the more we can think, we can come up with so many words. And often there are very subtle and slight differences between each of them. However, the more, what do you call, bombastic a word, it looks like that's a very important thing that's happening. Any case, it's useful for us to know the slight differences that are there for each of these. Now, the word synopsis is something that all research scholars hear, and this is basically a word that is used around the time when students are ready to submit their thesis. So university prescriptions will say you have to write a synopsis and submit it. And they'll also say that your dissertation should also have a synopsis, right? Synopsis is like an executive summary, right? It's capturing in a compressed manner all the key stages and steps that you've gone through and the most significant salient findings that you have. So that's the synopsis. The word synopsis is more useful from the dissertation point of view. But from the point of view of the literature that we're talking about, we would often have annotations, summary, and abstract that come quite close to each other. The word abstract is more specific and relevant for the actual research paper. For example, when you want to attend a conference and there's a call for papers, they'll always say submit a 250 word or let's say 500 word abstract. And if the abstract is selected, then you will be asked to give your full paper. So there they use the word abstract much more. Similarly, published papers will have a very small blurb written about what is that paper all about. Again, that's an abstract. Okay. So then we are now left with annotation and summary. So let me first eliminate each and come to annotation, right? So summary is a short version of a longer work, a brief statement or restatement of main points, especially as a conclusion to a work. Now here the word summary is more like, you summarize your work and you write your conclusions, right? That's a summary. It's like quickly saying what is it we've done and how are we concluding it. So summary is more useful in terms of pulling it all together to help conclude. Summary and conclusions is the way summary is used. So precise writing or paraphrasing, summary, summarizing again, they keep running into each other all the time. But from the point of view of our work, I would like you to stick with the word annotation. So the word annotation is basically a critical or explanatory note or body of notes added to a text. Okay, that's the classic definition. So what I would like you to understand is annotation basically is the notes that you have written about a paper that you have read that captures key elements of that particular paper, and also you have a small space where you have your reflection on that paper. Like you say, in what ways is this paper useful for me? What's my key takeaway from this paper? You can write there saying, this paper is enormously interesting because of the methodology that it's used. Okay. Or you will say, this paper is very interesting. However, they never explain what they mean by community. Right? They keep talking about community, but never explain what is the community. Right? So like that, you can always, and as I said yesterday, the entire paper is about child malnutrition, but nowhere the paper tells us what about male child malnutrition and girl child malnutrition. Children are seen as a homogeneous single group. And I have a problem with that, right? So I will say, this is something I find is a little jarring for a paper that's been published after so much of gender is all over the place. So an annotation is one where you not only are writing notes about what you read, but you also have a brief place where you have a reflection point, so that your memory about that paper becomes much clearer when you see your annotation. So what does an annotated bibliography do? So when you do an annotation of each paper, now you have an annotated bibliography. Okay, you have 15, 20 papers that you've read. You've actually done an annotated bibliography. Okay, it encourages you to think critically about the content of the work, right? You know you have captured it all. Proves you have read and understood your source, and situates your study and topic in continued professional conversation. And I said, writing a paper is basically a professional conversation, because you have read, now you want to start talking to the people who have been publishing, right? So an annotated bibliography actually helps you doing that. Now, recently I was telling you I've written a paper along with a colleague of mine looking at COVID-19 physical distancing within a context of social inequalities. Okay. Now, there isn't a lot that got published on this as of now because it's so new, right? Lots of people are publishing at this point of time on COVID-19. So Lancet has interesting papers on mental health, on domestic violence, and certainly a critique of physical distancing. However, we have at this point of time very interesting web resources, particularly online blogs. And I don't know how many of you look at wire.in, Wire, The Wire, Wire Science, and also scroll.in. Okay, and there's another one called India Spent. These are amazing because they're like cutting edge, you know. And there's one more called The Conversation, which comes from abroad. And EPW also has another component called EPW Engage, right? So it is like, you know, op-eds which are published in newspapers, you have them now all online. And they are so current, they're so cutting edge. Everybody just writes only 800 words or 850 words, but they really make punching remarks and have all the data in place. And these are very, very educated. Okay, very educated. And there are many of these international news magazines and papers which are all online. So the Herald Tribune, the Guardian, all that, the Newsweek and all. So I find that on social media, people are sharing a lot of links to these writings because everybody is so, uh, so disturbed with what's going on, and whatever they read, they want to share. So at a point of time before this workshop, I had like 20 tabs which are open. And at any point of time, I still have 20 things that I have to read and I have not completed reading. And I think in the past 3 months, apart from all the domestic work that I'm doing, I think I'm reading so much. 800 words, you know, you get that much and you're reading so much of it. It's not like reading a 20-page article, but 800 words itself, like you're doing it in a matter of half an hour, 1 hour. It's so amazing. So what I did was I actually compiled, I didn't have really time to write annotations of each of that, but the most salient aspects of each of those web resources that I found, I started copy pasting them into one document so that when I'm writing and I think about which article has spoken, it's easy for me to go back and look for it. So what I'll do is shall I just show that to you guys? I don't know who will say yes or no.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, so I'll just, okay. So I'll just put this down. I will go into my, just give me a minute, okay? Notes, okay. Is this, it's not showing up, right? I will show you. Okay, so this is my notes, okay? Lockdown, I said notes for COVID-19 lockdown readiness preparedness paper. And you can see that I've actually copy pasted them. So when I write my paper, I'm not going to copy any of these and paste them because that's plagiarism, right? So these are notes as is that I have taken. But what I made sure I do is, are you able to see this? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. So for every article that I have seen, I have to necessarily get the URL. So there is this little bit that talks about what the world can learn from Kerala about how to fight COVID-19. Interesting lines about it and who's written, which date, and what is the URL. Then there is this article, Coronavirus Lockdown 3.0 Explained, and then the author's names, and then the URL. Then like that, I just kept pasting all that I have read because I don't want to miss anything. I didn't want to miss these links. So in a health crisis, the most vulnerable cannot be left to fend for themselves. This is a colleague of mine who has written, and this is the link. So I went on pasting everything that I think was useful, all the stuff that I thought was quotable, and kept it all here. Can you see? And this is 22 pages. Okay. I have all these notes and the way they are, right? So when I wanted to write this, I was just looking at, I said, okay, there are a couple of them who've written about caste and COVID-19. So which of these 22 pages has that paper on caste? These are papers that are only the talking about caste. Okay. So this is a paper, Plague Passport to Detention Epidemic Act was a medical surveillance tool in British India. So it's talking also how at that point of time, lower caste people got completely marginalized and also got stigmatized. So this is a paper that's talking about caste. So it got highlighted. And probably there's one more. Again, yeah, more. Okay, so this is another paper which says India's stark inequalities make social distancing much easier to some than others, written by Priya Shu Kaul, and it talks about our caste, and I thought very useful, so I put it in quotes. Yeah, so you see some more articles on caste. So it means in the same Word document, by putting here the search word, I can see which papers have spoken about it, and I can read them again. If I want more details, I can click on the link and go there and read. And while I'm writing, I can make decisions about which ones I want to refer to. Okay, so this is the 22-page verbatim notes that I have. These are not notes that I have written, okay? But I thought they're useful and I don't want to miss them. So I literally copy pasted. And when I write, I make sure I don't write any of these as is. Okay, so it means whenever you write, reading a lot and it's exciting you and you think you're going to write something about it, you want to do something with it, make sure you save it in some form. Okay, so it will be available. So I can show you the paper that would be finally coming, but in its how it will look when you do an online. Sharing and share this also. Just I'm showing off a little bit, but I'll Okay, so this is how it is. It's going to come in this journal. The title of our paper is COVID-19, Physical Distancing and Social Inequalities. Are we all really in this together? Okay, so this is our paper with all. So reviewers had lots of comments. So when you respond to reviewers' comments, which I'll talk to you on the last day, you have to give each reviewer's comment like this, okay, and then respond to that. Give your response as to how did you respond to it. What did you correct? What did you not correct? Everything you give as response. See, we have something like almost 3-4 pages of response, and then this is the paper with all the revisions that are done. And whichever revisions are done and the editors and reviewers have to see again, that is actually placed in a highlight. Okay, so they know this has been inserted with reference to a comment that they have made. Again, this is another paragraph that's been inserted. This is another para. Red one is what we have added additionally to clarify something. So you do all this for the paper to go through its final print. Okay, so this is how you go through so many different stages. Okay, so that makes sense. So can you all go ahead and look at your own annotations for 5 minutes? Yeah?
No, ma'am.
No? Is
Yes,
my
ma'am.
video off?
Yes, ma'am. Video off. Yeah. Now it has come. Now it has come.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, so I was telling you all that I was looking at your annotations, but obviously I've not completed it. Can each of you quickly look at your own annotation and see whether you think you've done justice from a review point of view? Spend few minutes. You have already read it, so you know what it is. And some of you can open your speaker and your video and just say what you think you have to do now.
Ma'am.
Yeah, who is this? Yes, who is that?
Yeah, Jaganya. It's Jaganya. Yeah, I
Yeah,
read
okay.
my paper. I don't think so. It's like an annotation. It's like I just summarized the paper. That's it. I don't think so. It's like annotation.
Okay, so it's not talking to you at all, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You need to think about what is the paper contributing, what methodology have they used, or
I just mentioned in one point what methodology they use. That's it. But I just
yeah.
summarized this paper. That's it.
Okay, so if you have to redo now, you know what are all the things you need to do, right? So I'll
Yeah,
also
yes,
try
ma'am.
and
Of course.
share a sample. I'll try and share a sample of an annotation.
Okay,
So
ma'am.
that can help you all to think about what else should go into it. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else? Yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Who is this? Who is this? Is your video on? Your audio? Yeah. Shamishta ji? Somebody else wanted to talk, no? I didn't know who it was. Do you think people are around or they have their video, audio closed and they are somewhere else? Hmm? Just 3-4 of us are probably going around doing this.
Hello, ma'am.
We are always here, ma'am. We don't want to miss each word from you, ma'am. We never want to miss. I don't want to miss each word from you. So I never go anywhere.
Hello, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Hello.
Who is that?
Ma'am, I'm Sulita.
Ma'am, can you hear me? This is Vasanti.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Just I wanted to know, because you were mentioning that you're a study.
My
I have to put it at the end of it, at the end of the annotation. What I have done is I have put it on each aspect, on the methodology, on the findings, and on the recommendation. So can we do it that way?
Are you saying you have summarized every aspect of the paper?
Yes. And given my view on each aspect, like on the methodology, on the finding, on the recommendation as such.
Okay.
But what you mentioned in the annotation, you just do the summary kind of thing and give your
Yeah, you can always write what you think is used to you from the point of view of your paper also. Like you have a critique or critical view of that paper. Supposing you find that paper very useful, yeah, then you'll actually write there saying, this paper makes reference to a particular scale that I'm very interested in. Okay, it means you may want to search on the net for the scale, or actually write to the authors asking them, what is the scale that you used? Can you share them? Right? So you have a critical view of certain papers, but you also have a lot of takeaway from some papers. So you don't want to miss, so you write that down in your, like a footnote to that annotation. Yeah.
Ma'am, can
Yes.
you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Who is this?
This is Sulita. I'm from a humanities background. Basically, I'm from English literature background. So I wrote an annotation on an article, but I couldn't exactly trace out any methodology. So I haven't, even when I look at articles, I'm not able to understand which methodology has been employed. So how to go about it? And in the annotation also, I haven't mentioned anything of that sort. So how to go about this?
So I think, in the field of humanities, what happens is, since the text that you analyze, you may use methodologies which have to do with, textual analysis and discourse analysis. Okay, so you may have to look for those kind of things. By reading that particular article, you would probably know or think about what kind of worldview those authors seem to be holding, right? You have lots of interesting positions which have to do with post-colonial literature, right? So you would have to look for a different set of analytical tools, which are not the same as what I am talking, yeah, because typical social sciences and research that we do in gender and health, etc. There's a lot more focus on empiricism focus on collecting data, etc. But researchers who are actually reading literature and then writing or analyzing, critiquing, the tools that you have for doing it are very different from what we have, right? While cultural studies people also use very similar kind of what do you call, tools like discourse analysis or critical theory, etc. So I think you need to look at language specific analytical tools. Yeah.
Okay,
So from
thank you,
that
ma'am.
perspective, you will have things to critique.
Good afternoon, I'm Soumya. I have a couple of questions for you, ma'am. This annotations, when we are writing the annotation, has it to be aligned with the scope of our study? See, for example, the annotation which I wrote is working memory in children with developmental disabilities. Okay, the implication for me is how am I going to use it in my practice as a special educator? So when I am writing this annotation, what will be the focus of my writing it? Because it is compares 4 groups and what are their unique working memory styles?
Yeah, you definitely have to capture what are they doing first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then you can see what is it you want to draw and write a separate note at the bottom for yourself.
Okay. See, the question I have is, this annotation is for myself or for my research study? Is it for somebody else to read?
No. No, the thing is, it's for you, but if you do so cryptic that it won't even be accessible to you. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
So you're basically doing it so that every time you don't go back to the original paper, which is 20 pages. So you created a one page which quickly captures what are the most salient aspects of that research. And what are the most important things that you would like to capture is what you write at the bottom for yourself.
Okay.
So if you were to put all of that into a Word document, for example, a 10-page, 50-page Word document, after 3 months or 4 months of reading, you probably have 50 pages that you already have. Yeah. And you can't remember which one is what. So you will have some cryptic terms that you're using. So like the way I have put cast.
Yeah, correct. I understood.
The word, and it will quickly take you to those 5 papers that have only spoken about that.
For example, it has spoken about working memory. So if that is my, okay.
So you can put working memory, you can put different things and keep pulling them up. So when you're writing, you can do a separate page on which you write on working memory. I have annotation 1, 7, 10 and 15. Okay. On children with attention deficits, I have 2, 3, 4, 5. So when I'm doing my paper, I know that I'm going to pull up these, read them, and then write up mine, put those citations. This one I write, I put those citations. You get it? It's
I understood.
Enabling you to do the themes and also identify the references for those themes.
Yeah. Has every annotation should be evaluated?
Depends, there are many which are so routine that you will not say much. There's one more that I'll show a little later.
Okay.
Because you can do an annotation, you still have to process it some more, and I'm going to talk about it now.
Okay, because when I read upon it, it says there are a couple of types of annotation. Namely, evaluative, informative, indicative. So these are different types of annotations, and so when I started doing the assignment, I was a little confused. Then I just decided to go with my own gut feeling. That's all.
Okay. Yeah. No, I have some more which I will show. Then you will really know what probably you could have done or you missed doing. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Welcome. So shall we go ahead then? I have just one more bit left, Lalita ji.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Question, can we take it? Ma'am, there is a question. Can we take it? Lalita, can you please take it? It is in the chat box. Lalita?
Is that the word? Is critical review another term for annotation?
Yeah, critical review. There is a question, ma'am.
Yeah. So, still a small part of the larger grid. Okay. When you do a lot of annotations, that will enable you to do the critical review. Annotation per se is, in that sense, you're reviewing that particular, but you don't do a critical review. You capture first what is there in that paper. Then you say, okay, what is it that I think is missing in this paper, or I think I want to take away from this paper. So it's like a small note to yourself. This paper, how is it talking to you? That part you write. But the critical review term is used for doing a comprehensive review of all that you have put together. Okay, so that's a much larger exercise, and annotation is a step towards that. Okay, so shall we go ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm opening my PPT. I'll just get this PPT.
Ma'am, there is another question. Can we take it?
What is it? What does it say? Yeah, go ahead. Please read it.
What are the bullet points of annotation?
We're coming to that. All the bullet points. Okay. So typically when you're reading a lot of empirical papers, you would require, so for the study that we have done looking at smartphones, youth and media, we definitely wanted to capture all these. What is the title of this article? What is the source of this article? And for us, the source was from where did we get it? Like LexisNexis, or we got it from Google or News, etc. So that was a source. The publication date and the source country, because it was a media analysis. So we're looking at pieces written from other parts of the world, but the focus was India. Access tool, which is again, which was the, what do you call, the search engine we've used. Access date, when did we access that? Country, all that. So you can create all the key things that you don't want to miss. Okay. So for most of the social science research, very clearly you want to say title, author's name, and have the citation as per the index, style, manual of style. Then when you do the annotation, make sure you're writing out what is the study about, where was it done, and what was the seats like this, serial number, author's name and year, last name first, you put it the way it's done. This is like you've done your annotations, then you actually, it'll be easier for you if you do an Excel. How many of you, I don't know, are comfortable with an Excel sheet? But Excel sheet will help you actually sort things very well. So when you create an Excel sheet, all the articles that you have downloaded and you put them into different folders and files, you can actually number them. And you can use that number here and go in a chronology. So you have the author's name and year, that's all you do here. You don't put the entire reference. Supposing it's a bunch of empirical studies that you're looking at, you can always say what is the sample size. You also want to know what is the location of the study. Was it done? For example, this particular grid is very specific for health related research. So is it research done in rural areas, in urban, it's done in a hospital setting? Somebody who's working on education might say rural, urban, school, primary school, elementary school, high school, or college. Where is the study done? Tribal area, etc. Then you can think of as many parameters that you want to capture on an Excel sheet, and then you can clearly put what are the important findings. And those important findings, instead of writing them into very, very long sentences, try and do them into simple bullets. So when you do it, your 40 or 50 papers that you have read and captured your annotations, from the annotations you turned this into a table, you have at a snapshot everything in one place, right? And you can see for yourself, like when I was telling you about the research that we've done on breastfeeding and infant feeding practices, when we did that, that's when we saw that most of the studies on infant feeding and breastfeeding practices research was being done by medical doctors, was being done largely in urban areas, was being done in slum locations very close to the hospital. So you'll start seeing a pattern as to who is being researched, who is researching, who is being researched, at what kind of samples or sizes are there for these research projects, and also what's the timeline when you have most of your papers. Okay, so that kind of visually it gives you an understanding about how these are distributed, how they are getting organized. So these sample papers that I have given you, if you were to look at the paper that we've done on unintentional injuries among children, okay, that's a paper based on review, literature review. You will see in that paper there's an entire tabular form which gives information on all the key papers. It also has an interesting bar chart that puts out what are all the most frequent kinds of injuries that most papers talk about. For example, if each paper is saying among the injuries of children, 60% of it is due to drowning. And many papers are talking about drowning. Then you'll say, okay, out of the 40 papers that we reviewed, almost 30 papers are talking about drowning. So, that's again, you can do a kind of bibliometric analysis looking at the literature itself. And somebody was asking, what is meta-analysis? Meta-analysis also is very similar, but it's largely done by epidemiologists. It's done by epidemiologists and it's done by public health people. And also individuals who got lots of data from randomized control trials. And what they do is they sift through a lot of quantitative research that's been done and published as research papers, and they go back and look at each of these papers in terms of what are the definitions that they have. Supposing the research is all on children, then they'll start looking at what is the definition of children that all these papers have. So somebody has used children below the age of 5, somebody is saying between 0 and 10, somebody is saying between 0 and 15. So you have a very fluid and dynamic definition of children. Then what they do is they look at which are the papers that have definitions which are much closer. Then they eliminate all the others and take only those papers. And then they look at what kind of data did they produce, what kind of Pearson coefficient correlation coefficient data that they have given, and what kind of confidence intervals they given. So they put all that data and then they further analyze to see what is the pattern that they are seeing. And you may wonder who do meta-analysis and for what do they do meta-analysis. And one example I can give is, at the fairly early stages of the HIV pandemic, now nobody talks about HIV after COVID-19 came. At the peak of HIV pandemic, there was a lot of concern about what is it that one has to do. One would mean the hospital people, doctors have to do, pediatricians have to do, gynecologists and pediatricians have to do when HIV positive women deliver babies. Okay, number one, can they be allowed to have a natural delivery or should they be given a C-section? Right, number one. Number two, when they deliver, should they be allowed to breastfeed their babies or should they be told to bottle feed their babies? Because the concern is if it's a HIV positive woman, what if through breastfeeding she's going to transmit HIV to her infant? So a lot of research that was done on HIV mothers who are breastfeeding, because it's already there for a while. So there's research available to say HIV mothers who are breastfeeding, HIV mothers who are bottle feeding. They're looking at all those data, and then WHO, World Health Organization, is the organization that has to take a very clear stand on what has to be done and put out globally a protocol about how they want this to be seen. For example, COVID-19 being declared as a pandemic came from WHO, and there was a huge confusion about whether it's a pandemic or not, and governments were waiting for WHO's notification. So across the world, people look up to WHO for its guidelines as to what has to be done. So for WHO to take, it has a bunch of people who do these kind of meta-analysis using what are called as Cochrane databases. So all people who do research will actually put their data also into the database. So other researchers can also analyze their data. Okay. So then they looked at all the research and they said that actually HIV mothers bottle feeding their babies seems to be creating more problems because number one, HIV doesn't seem to be getting transmitted through breast milk. There is no evidence for that. So there is no likelihood of breast milk, HIV getting transmitted through breast milk. And two, there seems to be greater risk of babies dying due to diarrheal diseases than due to HIV. Okay, because bottle feeding also then means your bottles have to be extremely clean, they have to be sterilized, the milk has to be very good, the milk cannot be contaminated, the water that gets used in milk, and also the levels of dilution that people get depends on the level of income and poverty. So actually the the threat of survival is much higher, the threat of survival is much higher if the babies are given a bottle than allowed to do breastfeeding. So WHO had put out this notification saying doctors should encourage HIV mothers to breastfeed their babies because bottle feeding is riskier than HIV transmission through breast milk. So, this kind of big announcements that come through a lot of these kind of analysis that happens. And that's a meta-analysis that's done using research. Means your research becomes the raw material for somebody else who is doing the meta-analysis. So most of us don't do meta-analysis because it basically requires very high levels of econometric and data analysis skills, and also very high levels of being access to a lot of databases. Not all of us have that kind of databases. Access to those kind of databases. So essentially it means that capturing all your review into an Excel gives you a lot of insights which otherwise you will not get. Okay, so it's like every time you look at a paper, every time you look at an annotation, it is like you're looking at one tree. But when you do an Excel or you put a Word document with 60 or 80 pages, that is like looking at a forest. When you look at the forest, you'll say, oh my God, here there are teak trees, here there are sag trees, here there are, all that variety and the patterns, everything starts emerging. Okay. So I would basically urge all of you to just go ahead and do this because it's interesting and it's exciting. Okay. So I have actually one small bit on writing a review chapter, and then Dr. Dave suggested that I also do a small session on citation. So I have a small PPT on that. And now it's almost 4:25. So we have another hour to go. So shall we use 5 minutes for Q&A and then get back into this?
We can do that.
Yeah. Yes. Any questions that you have very high on your mind?
There is no chat questions, ma'am. I will just ask the participants. Participants, do you have any questions? Participants? If you can please hear me, do you have any questions?
Nothing for now, ma'am.
Okay.
Nothing for now? Anyone?
No, madam, we can proceed, ma'am.
Okay, great.
Okay, ma'am, nothing.
Yeah. So now we come to, writing the review. Okay, so which is the part 4 of this. So are you guys able to hear me or my mic is off?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Fine, good. So what are all the questions for the review that you do? Each of these are there in all your review, and we also said this many times. So how has the author formulated the problem? Has it been clearly defined in the paper? The significance of the research, it is scope, severity, relevance, clearly established. And then what are the sources of the research? Is it primary? Is it secondary? And what is the author's theoretical framework? Because very often they do spell out what is their theoretical framework for this research, or they even spell out the kind of concepts that they are actually engaging with. Okay, so that's important for you to know. Then what is the methodology used for the study? How has the paper made attempts to link theoretical perspectives to the research evidences? And then has the author evaluated the literature relevant to the problem issue? Does the author include literature taking positions she or he does not agree with? In the sense, sometimes authors might just take one slant and just go about doing their paper. Then you also might want to know what about the other positions? How come the author does not cover that? But that's just an alert for you, but you still will look at how has this author gone about doing his or her work in his or her paper. These are all like, as I'm giving you an example, somebody said, everything about a paper is so interesting. How do we decide what to grasp from it and write an annotation? So these are the kind of questions when you ask, you know that you're not just looking at the paper like a glossy, beautiful piece of paper in your hand, but you're actually looking at what is the hidden grid. You're looking into the paper. You're saying, okay, if you are saying this, how did you get this? Okay, if you're saying this, what's your theoretical position? Okay, who else thinks like you? So, you're basically talking to the paper, right? Now, not all papers are talkable, but many of them are talkable. So you keep talking to that paper. So you keep making your notes, you keep, engaging. But one thing that you have to keep in mind is, our mind keeps running all over the place. Okay. Whenever you're reading and you don't really have any major target, or let's say major deadline that you have to submit this day after tomorrow, or you have to meet your guide 3 days later, or you have to mail something to somebody, you will hold a paper a whole day and you won't go anywhere. Okay, it happens to me, that's why I will tell you. You will, whereas if you have some of those deadlines, you're like moving through that paper so briskly that you wonder, where has all this productivity gone all these days? So what is important? Somebody is saying no audio. Is it true?
Audible, ma'am.
It's audible, na?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Audible, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Audible.
No, somebody wrote no audio. I'm wondering. Okay. So, you often wonder, where did all this productivity go? So what you need to tell yourself that, you have huge potential, you have huge capacity, but each of us tends to get very badly distracted. We have so many things to do, we get bored very easily, etc. So I found that, in the past 2 years, this is like going a little away from what we are talking. I've gone seriously into doing yoga. Okay. I do yoga and I also have weekend meditation classes. So these kind of, what do you call, traditions that we have of yoga actually help hugely in having our mind very beautifully focused. Okay. So every time your mind is running away, you can bring it back, because you have to just keep reading and engaging with that reading vis-a-vis other readings that you have. But every time you're reading, you want to see your phone, you want to do something else, you want to just quickly write that email because it's been pressing your, everything becomes important. So coming back to this, I was giving you an example that when you go for a dinner party and somebody says, how was the dinner? You won't tell everything about the dinner. You're going to say 4 things about dinner. 1, fantastic ambience, fantastic hospitality, very tasty food. Overall, we had great fun. You had those parameters. Similarly, these are the parameters for review. What is the author attempted to do? How did he go about doing it? Was he sufficiently clear? How do I learn how he has made these connections, he or she has made these connections, and what is my takeaway, right? So have that kind of grid, which are like the key parameters, and then write, you write and absorb and also analyze. So how do you create themes? So re-examine the methodology of findings of various studies. Then you also try to look at all the interesting themes that are emerging. It will help you see whether they cohere, in the sense, all the themes that you have, whether they seem to be coming together and saying the same things, or they are saying different things. Okay? Probe the reasons for the difference. Is it because of different theoretical perspectives or ideologies they subscribe to, or there are different ways in which they are measuring or not measuring? Because ultimately it's also the definition of a measurement. Okay? Somebody says, I'm very happy. You will always want to know, but how do you know you're happy? Okay, what's your measure of happiness? Right? Oh yeah, I went shopping, I bought a lot of things, I'm happy. Okay. Somebody says, I'm very happy. You say, how do you know you're happy? You say, oh, I closed my eyes and I was meditating and it felt very good. Right? So that's your definition of happiness. So what are all these definitions that people use? And is it because of different definitions that they are arriving at different conclusions, or is it because of different measurements they're coming? That kind of scrutiny you need to do, so that you actually become sharper in what you're looking at and what you're going to draw from what you look at. Pose questions to help write the review. All studies have strengths and weaknesses. Evaluate what you report, synthesize the research. As I said, don't just describe. And one most important thing is avoid plagiarism. You should not write everything as is from somebody else's source. And I think day after tomorrow, I have a short session on plagiarism and publications. So we'll go and do more things there. But just to say that you do draw from other people's work, but you should not copy paste anything. You should paraphrase very close to what they have written completely. And you can't have a paper written completely on quotations, right? None of these things really work. So you need to give credit where credit is due, and put together what you have put together and what you would like to present and submit for, present your guide and submit for publication. Yeah? Either ways. So the general thing, I think, when people were asking how many papers to read, comprehensiveness and focus go hand in hand. Sometimes you actually get maybe 15 papers, 20 papers, and they are solid, like comprehensive, got a good hang of everything. That's good enough for you. Okay. Sometimes if your task of doing review is about reviewing the extant body of knowledge of as many micro studies that have been done, like what are all the important micro studies that were done on domestic workers, right? You can't say I've reviewed 5 and I'm done. If somebody say, you mean the entire country, there are only 5 studies on domestic workers? That can't be. Okay. So the figure that you arrive at is also linked to what topic you are looking at. Okay. If you're looking at broader macro papers that are explaining women's education and employment, I don't have to do 60 papers for that. I might say, okay, there are 5 good papers in the recent past that attempted to look at these relationship with macro data. And to start with, that's very good for me. I may have other questions and then look for other literature. Okay. So typically a short literature review requires at least 10 to 12 papers. Again, depends on what the review is all about. Literature review is anyway standing on the shoulders of other scholars. If you look at Google Scholar, that's what it says, standing on the shoulders of other scholars. There are several websites that provide good understanding of how to write a good review paper. I think I need to look for any URL for that, but you should be able to get good to how to actually write your review paper and how to structure your review paper. Okay, so with this, I have done the review of literature kind of part which we wanted to cover. So I can pause a bit and then, open the other PPT, which talks about how to do citation. So,
Ma'am, there are some questions. Can we take it?
yeah, please.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
it is saying that in unintentional injurious paper, it is been mentioned that 15 studies included in the review of 9 were included in primary analysis and 11 are included in secondary analysis. What does it mean?
You mean the paper that we have published and I have shared with you? I need to
Yes,
go and look at the specifics, but 9 papers are papers which were primary studies, okay, which we have
yes,
looked at. And 11 papers had secondary data that they had analyzed. Okay, so that's what
yeah.
it means. When you say secondary data, it means large surveys that were done at a national level, or for example, national crimes register bureau, things like that. So you have lots of those secondary sources from which people draw and write papers. So that's secondary source. Whereas people do their own empirical research and write papers, those are primary papers or primary empirical research papers. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. The next one, ma'am, could you enlighten a little on the difference between primary source of literature and primary data, secondary source and secondary data? Should I
Primary
repeat,
source.
ma'am?
No. I'm
Primary
just thinking.
source.
I read.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking.
yeah.
Primary source of literature, primary data, secondary source, secondary data. Primary source, secondary source is something else actually. Supposing I carry out interviews and then I get and I write case studies. So I have the primary source and I have done the data collection, and that's my data. Okay. But if somebody else has done the study, it's not my study. Somebody else has done, and then they have put together lots of case studies. And I'm now going to be using their source to make a point and to build an argument. Then I'm using secondary source. Okay. So that's the difference between primary source and secondary source. Primary data and secondary data is essentially primary data, microdata, etc., collected by me firsthand. That's primary data. Secondary data is data collected by another agency, not what I have commissioned, but they have collected that data and they put it out in the public and use that and analyze it and write something. So National Family Health Survey data, census data, NSSO data, all these are secondary data. Okay, and also in a way, secondary source. It's not what I have collected. Yes.
Okay, ma'am. The next one is, do the review of literature have to be year-wise?
Year-wise doesn't make any sense because year is basically about the date of publication. Okay. Very often, huge shifts in discussion, etc., can even happen in a matter of 6 months, right? So it's not so much about doing it year-wise. You think of doing a chronology. Like for example, you have major watersheds in a country, right? So if somebody is doing a kind of changes that are taking place in the way our plans are being done in this country, then probably you will say post-independent period, the planning processes, how they are happening, and then pre-globalization, then you say post-globalization. Now you might do a lot of things that you will say pre-COVID and post-COVID. So there has to be some watershed around which you're trying to see major shifts that are taking place. These don't necessarily happen in terms of years, but they happen around some major events in society and countries. So people often talk about the world post September 11, or people will talk about the world post the attack that took place on Taj Hotel in Mumbai. It's like that. So you have major epoch, like big things that are happening, and then you try and see what shifts took place because of that. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Yesterday's question, ma'am, this is someone who had posted yesterday also. Yesterday's question regarding line between writing introduction and literature review in thesis.
Yeah, see, within the thesis, because it's structured like that, where you put an introduction and then you do a literature review. Introduction there basically posits the broader context within which that particular subject matter is being discussed. Okay, and it also probably alludes to much broader aspects within which within social sciences, within which that subject matter is of interest, and then you will say that a lot of research publications since then have been discussing this particular subject matter, and the next chapter is going to go into the specific details in terms of research papers and what they seem to be conveying to us. Then the literature review goes into the specific aspects of published literature. It's possible that in the introduction you're much more at the level of public policy or legal aspects or even census definitions, etc. So you are giving the preamble to your dissertation. And the introduction, you also will talk about what is the structure of your thesis, right? You'll say each chapter is going to unfold this. This is what we have done, and this is how it's going to unfold. And then you have the literature review that specifically goes into the existing body of knowledge, and through that draws what you think you now feel you want to do, and poses all the key research questions. And then you say, okay, these are the research questions I want to answer, and the objectives of addressing these research questions are these. And my next chapter is going to tell what is the research design and the methodology. So you then write the methodology. Then you go into looking at what is the context within which the research is being done. And then you write the context, so on and so forth. Yeah. So introduction is still at a much broader level. And review of literature is much more specific, that displays your skill of having read the existing literature and how you have digested it. And how did you draw your thread from there, to draw to your research. So it's literally like, how did you arch yourself from there? Okay. Yes. Next. Can you write?
Excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am, regarding the previous question, I just need some clarification. I'm from the Department of Psychology, and we follow the APA referencing style. So here now we have AP 7th edition also. And I've heard that some foreign theses, they have clubbed both the first two chapters together, like introduction and review of literature, as one single chapter. And if I look into Shodh Ganga, I have seen recent thesis, 2017, 18, and 19 thesis, where they have included all the models, conceptual framework, all that in introduction. And they have written a kind of abstracts in the review of literature chapter. So how do we go about that? We need a fine distinction between the first and second chapter. We don't have clarity in that, ma'am. So that is what I want to know.
Which university are you from?
Ma'am, Rajiv Gandhi National Institute, RGNIYD, ma'am.
Yeah, so whatever is your university deciding to have as a structure for the dissertation, you need to follow that. So in the US university, they may have clubbed these two. There are many universities in Europe that don't even expect a student to submit a dissertation like the way we do. Introduction, review literature, theoretical framework, methodology. They don't. What they basically do is you give an introduction, and then all the research work that you do, you spend time publishing 3 papers, and then you put your 3 papers in the appendix to the introduction, and then you're ready for your viva. Okay. They don't even have to send to the examiner, because 3 papers you published with external review. So they just send that entire bunch to 1 or 2 examiners and they conduct a viva. So every university has a very different way in which they think about how to structure the dissertation. Many universities abroad are placing more focus on writing research papers than spending all the energy writing these bulky dissertations. Okay, so a lot depends on your university, what you decide. So you don't have to go by university.
Okay,
What you
thank you,
see in
ma'am.
South Ganga could be
Yeah.
a decision of
Next.
that university, not your university.
Okay, ma'am. Can we
Thank
take
you,
the
ma'am.
next
Thank you,
question?
ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
Ma'am, can we take the next question?
Yeah.
Ma'am, can we write review structure according to our research objectives?
No. See,
Should
this
I
is like,
repeat?
no, I follow. What I'm saying is that is like putting the horse before the cart. Okay. Because your research objectives are supposed to be drawn from your review of literature. So how can you structure your review of literature on the basis of your objectives? You know, that's not the way it goes. You do your review of literature and then you try and see how all the strands, important strands that are emerging, and then you move towards then developing your research questions for your thesis. Yeah, see, but you can't structure this. In fact, you have to structure your research findings and your chapters on the lines of your research questions. Yeah, that it has to be forward, not backwards. Yeah.
No more questions.
Okay, so I'll do this, the short PPT on citation. Open that. Okay, so you people are able to hear me? Sometimes that mic gets switched off.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah?
Ma'am.
Yes. I go ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the first things, so this is about citation style. Okay, so Professor Deb said, please do citation style, and I have basically stuck to APA. Okay, because that's what we also do in TISS. We have a style which is close to APA and also Chicago, but I stuck here to APA. So the first question that comes up is, why should we cite? You know, I know what to write, so I'm going to write. Why do I have to cite somebody else for that? Some of you have done your concept notes that we'll see tomorrow, which are all like that. People just wrote something. There's no reference, there's no clarity about from where did they get those ideas, etc. So the importance of citations comes from the doctrine of fair use. Okay? The doctrine of fair use, basically it has to do with intellectual property. Yeah? Everybody who has written something basically has an intellectual property over what they have written. So somebody else using it has to follow the doctrine, has to follow the doctrine of fair use. So fair use is a legal concept that allows the reproduction of copyrighted material for certain purposes without obtaining permission and without paying a fee or royalty, which means it is a fair use, means you can use provided you are being fair. You are telling everyone that you took it from me, and you're not going to tell everybody that it's yours, right? Only on that condition you can use it. So that's the understanding. So it's like you borrow your sister's sari and go for a party and you show off. Everybody says, what a wonderful sari. Supposing your sister says, okay, you can wear my sari, but everybody in the party says, the sari is beautiful, you should tell them it's my sari, okay? So what would you do? Would you want to wear that sari or not wear that sari? Okay? So in real life, that's different. But when it comes to research, you need to tell everybody, yes, this is my sister's sari. Okay. So Purposes permitting the application of fair use generally include review, news reporting, teaching, or scholarly research, right? So these are all considered to be very worthy of sharing, because they are for a cause to do with the greater good. You are really broadcasting good work through all this that you can do. Scholars are expected to make acknowledgements, citations, and provide references. Okay, and then there's also an ethical obligation. So when you're using unpublished materials, you have ethical obligation. Avoid plagiarism. So to avoid plagiarism is a statutory obligation. Means if you actually violate it, you can be penalized, right? So it's a statutory obligation. It's not just good things like, be truthful, don't tell lies, be a good girl, good boy. These are like, they're not statutory obligations, right? But plagiarism, violation of that there is a violation of a statutory obligation. It also tells you something about professionalism and credibility. Means your levels of professionalism, how do you display it, and what's your credibility? Okay, that's important. You establish your credibility by continuously putting out what you have got from where. So in the PPT that I have done, where I have used lots of images, okay, the images that I have used, I have gone, though I have got it from Google, I have gone to a particular location in Google where it says images and it also says tools. And when you click on the tools, there is a particular menu which says rights, utilization rights. Okay, how can you use it? So one clearly says that you cannot use it unless you pay for it. And the other that says that you can use and modify with prior acknowledgement. If you want, I can show you that. So there are a variety of that. So you have to click on the link which says free use. Okay, and then whatever images come up in that is what you can copy and paste. And then you also give the source. There are many sites which actually provide free resources. So they are known as, Creative Commons. And then Wiki also has a lot of free Wiki materials. So you have to look at things whether they are free stock or they are paid ones. And you're not supposed to copy paste things without acknowledging from where you've got it. So, which means every small thing that we do, if we were to ethically tread our path, then it basically means that you're acknowledging all that you're able to get in order to carry out your work very well. So check the citation and referencing style of the journal publisher you intend to submit. In the sense, all journals have different styles that they follow. So before you submit, depending on which journal you're aiming, you look at what style that they adapt and work your paper along those lines, right? So if that journal does not take your paper and you have to move it to the next journal, again you have to go back and look at the author's guidelines and then see how to rework the paper to fit their guidelines. So most commonly followed style is the APA style, which is the American Psychological Association style, and they have this link which give you all the citation related guidelines. The other styles that are there are Chicago, MLA, Harvard, Oxford. So whenever you're doing any kind of citation, you have to stick to one style, right? You can't be doing the same referencing, different kinds of referencing you cannot do. You have to stick to only any one style. So when we begin now, within the paper, we have references and those are called in-text citations. Means within the text, you have within parentheses or within brackets, you have the name of the author, comma, and a year. And if you put a quotation, you will also have colon and a page number, right? So these are known as in-text citations. So it gives a brief idea to reader regarding your source, gives a citation within the body of the dissertation, and then gives that information at the end. Quotations refer to verbatim text marked in quotation marks or given in blocks. So some journals expect you to give it separately in italics. Some of them just expect you to give it continuous but put it within quotes. Both paraphrased and direct quotations require citation. Okay, they have to be cited. When quoting or summarizing a particular passage, include the specific page number from the original work as well. And I was telling you, if you have more than one page where the quotation is running, you need to give both the numbers, both the page numbers. Then references, and people often ask, what is the difference between references and bibliography? Okay, references are very clearly the ones that you actually refer to in the paper, or the ones that you actually refer to in the dissertation. Bibliography is a broader base of readings that you have done, from where you have drawn a lot of ideas and you would like to also incorporate that. So that becomes a bibliography. So a lot of bibliography may or may not be put in the reference list, but bibliography is given because some people would like to show what are all the additional readings that they have done. So these are often misunderstood, but they are different. Similarly, you have people talking about footnotes and endnotes, and I think I have one PPT, one slide for that. We'll go back to that later. So references usually appear in the order of appearance in text, can be footnoted or given in end of chapter. So sometimes you have journal articles that have references given as numbers, like within brackets 1, within brackets 2, etc. Then your reference list will have that order of 1, 2, 3, whatever. There are no numbers, but in the insight, in text citations only saying Lingam 2015 or they 2013, whatever, then your reference list will be as per the alphabetical order. Okay, so bibliography includes work that we consulted by authors but not specifically cited. So journals require references and not bibliography. It's only in thesis that you would put a bibliography, but in journal articles, you don't put a bibliography. Significance of headings in their levels. Not sure whether this is something that all of you would like to know, but it's going to be there in this PPT. You can go into more details, but I'm just trying to say that from the title to you have a big title, then you have an introduction, then you have a subtitle, which is part of the introduction, then you have another title. So the clarity between what is the subtitle, first subtitle, and what is the subtitle, I think this kind of clarity you must get very well. Initially you don't, because when you do your drafts, they all look like big chunks of material that you have. And when you start logically looking at them and say, okay, is this a subset of this or is this separate? Then accordingly you can rework them. So when you often see in dissertations, articles don't have those kind of things, but they'll have something else. But dissertations will have this 1.0, 1.1, 1.1.1, so these are the levels, right? And in order to differentiate those levels, you can use different kinds of, not fonts, but different kinds of point sizes. So often the headings are 16 point size, then you have the first level, which is 14 level, and then the 1.1.1 will be 12 kind of thing. Sometimes you might also have some the 1.1.1 or 1.1.1.1, those get italicized, right? But you will have a manual of style of your own university which they give. This is what TISS has, and also many journal articles have. What journal articles will do is they don't give numbers, but they change the italics, in the sense the subheadings, subheadings are all italicized. The main headings are all title case. You have to remember that none of the journal articles will appreciate a title of an article in full caps or any of the subheads in full caps. They're always in title case. Okay, so you have to remember that. So you have different levels, secondary or level 3 of heading, etc. So the definition, the example that I've given is If your heading is women's work in public policy, next is at the secondary level, you have definitions of work. And within this, I'm also talking about how definitions have changed over a historical period. So that will be another subhead which goes a little ahead, and that comes at the third level. So this is the way you think about headings, their levels, and also their point size, whether they're going to be in bold, whether they're going to be in italics. A lot of these you need to carefully look at. So the difference, next thing is the difference between footnotes and endnotes. So you would often footnote things which are important for understanding a text, but will intervene if you were to put it in the text. So you put it separately. For example, in a lot of our articles, when we write about caste, and we routinely write SC, ST, OBC and all that, for an international audience, it's not very clear what is this SC, ST, OBC, right? So we do write scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, other backward classes, etc. But still it won't be clear. So we don't want to disturb the continuity in the paper, because if it's not a paper on caste and class, you don't want to break the continuity. So you would give a footnote that explains that in the Indian caste system, individuals are hierarchically organized as per caste, and the constitution has given these kind of definitions. So you will spell that out. So that footnote is basically giving greater clarity to what you've written in the text. Sometimes footnotes also have just URLs, etc. Now, what happens is in some journals, most journals don't want footnotes. So they'll ask you to turn all your footnotes into endnotes. And within MS Office, you actually have a possibility of turning a footnote into an endnote. Okay. Yeah. Endnotes generally are more elaborate. At times, there are additional references given in the endnotes. So all references then will show up in an alphabetical order at the end of the thesis or paper. So you need to understand then when do you use footnotes, when do you use endnotes. The APA style of referencing is one way you give the author's name. For example, here it's, let's say, Lingam, comma, Lakshmi. That makes the author's name. So the last name comes first. So Lingam is my last name. Lingam, comma, Lakshmi. Within brackets, we'll put the year. So it's a 2019, and then the page number, right? So this is how you will put it in the text, not in the reference. In text, this is the in-text citation. So you won't put the first name, sorry. So you'll only say Lingam, comma, 2019, comma, page 328, for example. That's the quotation from that page. All the details are here. And then single and multiple authors. So you have more than one author in the same paper, and you're going to refer to them. You see, first in-text citation is Selvaraj, Karan and Lee, 2015. And the next time when you're referring to the same, you would say Selvaraj et al, 2015, right? Sometimes you have several authors. Some journals allow up to 6. Some journals say only 3. Some will say 4. But let's say 6 or more, you can always say Lingam et al, 2018. Then you also will have more than one paper by the same author. Then you need to identify them as A and B. So here you see Lingam 2015A and Lingam 2015B. And you have to make sure that you give the same order references at the end of your paper or dissertation. There was also somebody who was asking about, supposing, you have not read something, but you have didn't read the original, but you read reference to that article in somebody else's paper. How do you refer that? You see, this is the first one here. Say, refer to both sources in the text, such as Iyer 2002 points out the intersectionality of class and caste as cited in Sen 2008, page 154. Okay, so it means you are citing Sen and you're talking about Iyer, but Iyer is not your primary source. You've not read Iyer directly, you read about Iyer in Sen. So in the reference list, you give Sen. Okay, you don't give Iyer because you've not read that directly. So these are this is information about books. How do you refer to them? And nowadays, many of the publications also have a DOI number. Okay, they expect you to put the DOI number. So when you put the DOI number, what the journal does is it starts capturing all those in blue. So when you open articles in the way we have done some time back, you'll start seeing all the references are in blue when you're in online, which means when you click on that blue, it's uplinked. When you click on that blue highlighted text, it takes you to that research paper. Okay, so they would like you to clearly mark out all the papers that are digitally available. Okay, so you need to put the DOI. Books don't have DOI, they would have ISSN number and ISBN number, so they can't be directly referred to with in blue in articles. Okay, so online journal articles, when you're using, there is one way of doing it. If you have internet sources, again, there's another way of doing it. Yeah, water, tea, kuncha, half. Yeah, thank you. Then here it's about how do you refer to newspaper articles. This is also about how do you refer.
Can you please show the last slide once again, previous slide?
Yeah, I have gone back. Looking at how to do citation just like this is actually looking at how to cook and not really cook, When you see people cooking, you just feel, okay, how do I do it? Okay, I know how to do it. Unless you do it, you won't really. So going through citation presentation is more like reading a recipe book. It's boring, Only when you're doing it and you see, okay, what do I have to do? You just have to, don't memorize any of these, okay? Don't memorize. You just have to know that there are a set of rules and you have to follow. And when you do it, you just go and do it at that point. Don't waste your mental space for all these things. These are, rules. It's like you have to walk on the left side of the road. You have to look on right side and left side every time you cross the road. So you don't keep on telling yourself about it. Once you know it has to be done, you do it when you walk, right? Similarly, when you write a research paper, there are rules and guidelines of how to do citation. You know them, you keep them for that particular journal, how it has to be done. You sort it out when you're writing the paper. That's all matters, because you can't remember what will come first in APA, what comes first in MLA, how does it matter? These are not really of relevance for us to remember so seriously. Okay, so the PPT will be there. You can always have a look at it. And I'm so damn sure if I were to do a quiz of what I have presented, even I am not going to succeed. Okay, so go through it, keep it for yourself as part of your kitty. These are all example for books, chapters, edited books, because each of them is different. You have single authored books, you have edited volumes, you have book chapters from edited volumes that you're referring to. Each of it has to be done with all those detailing in place. And this one is talking about it with all the examples. Practically all journals that give author guidelines again give all these examples. Okay, so not to worry at all. Again, when you're using unpublished dissertations, conference papers, how do you do it and how do you go about doing it? Then how do you organize your references at the end? So arrange references or bibliography in an alphabetical order based on author's last name. For same author in multiple publications, arrange by year of publication. Use small case A, B to differentiate. If same author, same year, arrange alphabetically based on title. Because the alphabetical order of the title becomes very important. References not needed for personal communications, email, letters, but in-text citation required. In the sense, sometimes people will say, this is something I got as a personal communication, and they'll just say something and footnote it and say personal communication. Okay, you can't write an entire paper saying it's based on personal communication, but there are certain things for which personal communication becomes important. Separate published online materials from the rest. Okay, some journals don't really have issues when you have them all together, but some journals will ask you to separate published papers and this separate. So you just have to look at what is the requirement or what is the specification given by the journal. So these are links to, you know, the, what do you call, links from where I could draw and this PPT. So with this, I'm done with this PPT. Okay. So this will also be available to you as part of all the other PPTs. So if you have not made notes, don't worry. Okay. So this I have stopped here. Now we can have some Q&A before we stop at 5:30.
The person is asking, ma'am, sometimes we use Wright, Shashank et al. 2020 and Shashank et al. 2020. Please tell us the difference of these two.
See, the second one means in terms of the, what do you call, the punctuations, okay? The dot comma is considered right, not just the dot, okay? So these are all, as I said, small micro details. You can always cross check. And another interesting site that I don't know how many of you would know, which I would like to recommend, is a site called Grammarly. And they also provide, in Grammarly, if you were to register, you can actually put the material that you write, almost about 600 words each time, and you know, get the site to give you feedback on your language. Every single sentence, it tells you what is correct with it and what's wrong with it. It's very helpful to make those corrections. So they also have paid service, but without having to pay also, the site corrects your language. So please do use, and many of these get sorted out by those sites.
Please explain more on why research justification should not be based on geography. What if I went to study a common phenomena focusing on a particular community?
Yeah, if you, supposing you're doing a study, let's say on access to family planning services, okay? There's a lot of research that's happening on family planning services. But if you think that a particular community in a tribal area with several different kinds of disadvantages do not have access to a lot of family planning services, and there is very high levels of different things, you know, health related issues or mortality or morbidity, etc. You have a lot of justification to say why you want to do the study there, right? So if you give a justification using different parameters very clearly, that gives you know, a reason why you want to do the study there. But if you were to say that, you know, no, I want to do this work since nobody else has done similar work in this location I want to do, that kind of justification won't do. Okay? Like the people will say that, you know, I'm in my town and it's easier for me to do research in my town. I know lots of people who can help me out. So I will do this research in my town. No, that won't be a sufficient justification as to why you want to do it in that town. Because you need to have clarity as to what about that town that's so special that you want to do there. Okay, that's what I meant when I said you can't just give geography as a reason for justification. You need to have many parameters that go along with it to give that justification, to give the rationale for why you want to do the research there.
Okay. Ma'am, can we take the next question? Why authors sometimes uses comma could not able to get it. There is a scholar who is asking why author sometimes uses comma could not able to get it through.
Where is that? Is it there in the chat?
It's in the chat, ma'am. Is it Avash? Avash, have you asked it? Avash? Hello, Avash. Have you asked this question? You can please unmute and ask yourself.
Says another question was resolved, it seems. Okay.
No, I think there is another question, ma'am.
Ma'am,
I'll
that
just go.
already resolved.
Yeah,
That,
please, Avash.
yeah,
That's
that question already resolved. Ma'am told that is a punctuation thing, that comma and dot, that author. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Avash. Thank you. Ma'am, the next question, can we justify a research gap based on the industry?
Yeah, because see, again, if you want to do a particular industry, if there's a reason why you think that industry, studying that industry is very important, that makes sense. For example, you have lots of different kinds of, let's say, sexual harassment cases coming up across many industries. But let's say one particular industry, there's nothing really coming up, nobody's writing about anything, then probably one might even wonder what is the specificity about that industry that there are no cases coming from there. Okay. Are they not forming a internal complaints committee, or there aren't too many women there, or they don't encourage women? What's really going on? Okay. For example, in the army or probably in the navy, some of those sectors are not open for research. Is it the reason why? We don't know. So you need to have a justification why an industry, not just an industry. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. The next question, how do we cite government report, for example, report of some natural disaster by NDMA, Government of India?
Yeah. You can do NDMA, you won't, because usually there is no author that's clearly specified. So you NDMA, 2020, 2019, that itself is part of the reference. And then you give the citation at the end. Again, you will say National Disaster Mitigation Administration Authority and Government of India. So the different agencies, for example, every different paper on COVID-19 now actually has Ministry of Health and Family Welfare as the reference. So MOHFW 2020 within brackets is continuously the reference for all the notifications, for information on red, orange, green zones, everything. So when you're writing about COVID-19 in India, you would give reference to either your state department and give the reference of that particular state, or you would have the MOHFW, or you have the ICMR, right? So institutions and documents emerging from institutions, when you refer, they become like individual entities. Yeah, these are all legal entities, so they can be referred to and given acknowledgement.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It's really a wonderful session we had today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.